Hi, and welcome to Serenity Now, a place for entrepreneurs to ask questions, learn, get connected, and be inspired. Join us as we talk about all things business and the search for the ever-elusive Serenity Now in both business and personal life.
Peggy, why should people listen to this episode today?
Oh, I think you should listen to this episode because there's some thought-provoking information about AI. And AI is something we hear about. It's a big mystery to all of us. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to embrace it. We're going to have to incorporate it into our businesses or perhaps see our businesses fail. So I think Lance brought up a really good point for all businessmen and women to think about.
Lance, why should people listen to this episode today?
Well, I don't think that I'm really qualified to answer that question. I'd rather you use Decipher.ai as a podcasting tool to summarize and create the show notes and the transcriptions of the article and the posts for social media, because it'll do a much better job than this poor human is ever going to do.
I'm writing that down.
I say that jokingly, obviously. So when it comes to AI, this is going to impact your business in ways that you don't really fully understand at this moment. And if you're not embracing it today, you are going to get lost, I think, in this valley of death that we find or will find so many companies in. And like I said at the top, there are going to be two different kinds of companies, those who fully embrace AI and those who are out of business. And I don't want you to be out of business.
Welcome to another episode of Serenity Now. I'm so excited about this episode. We've got first of all, I'll introduce my Serenity sisters who I've got with me. Peggy, hello and welcome. And then I've also got Candice. Thanks for joining us, Candice. And our guest, our superstar guest. If you haven't heard of this man, you will not be able to get enough of him by the end of this episode. So I'm super excited to introduce you to our guest, Lance. Lance and I met maybe not even a year ago at this point. And Lance has been connecting me over to the Alberta network. And I'm pretty excited and stoked to have him join us. Lance, you've got such a beautiful background, and I thought I'd let you take the stage and share that background with everyone else as to why would you be on an episode of Serenity Now. So take it away, Lance.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, first off, for just inviting me to be on the show. It's always great to be able to talk to other entrepreneurs about the things that I'm passionate about and be on the other side, I guess, as well of the table, because I've been podcasting now for a while and we've done, 260 odd episodes. And so it's always a lot of work when you're doing the interviewing and preparing for it, a lot less work when you are being the interviewee. So it's really nice to be here today. Thank you so much. And I'm also a fan of the show. I've listened to a number of the episodes and really like what you're doing. And it's really similar to what we do over at Amplify Your Business and talking to entrepreneurs and really teasing out those lessons and the things that are really the challenges and how people are overcoming those and making sure that we're building this greater, stronger community together as entrepreneurs. So thank you very much for that.
I understand you've been an entrepreneur for a long time. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, for sure. So my background in entrepreneurship goes back to when I was a kid. I was actually part of a really novel program at the time at my high school that was an entrepreneurship program where we were able to learn, the basics of entrepreneurship and business planning and market research and those kinds of things. And then by the third year, my grade 12 year, you had to basically create the business. You had to do it. You had to execute on it. And it was kind of a pass fail. If you made a buck, you passed. If you didn't get it off the ground, you kind of failed, right? And so I started an import business actually at the time. I grew up in northwestern Alberta on a farm, and so my background was agriculture, and so I brought in agriculture supplies, imported it from Portugal and China and the U.S. And this was back before the internet. Not to date myself too much, but we had the use of that. Everything was done through fax machines, and so it was a really great experience, and brought in thousands and thousands of dollars of product. My dad had to actually co-sign or guarantee the loan by putting our big 4-wheel drive tractor up as collateral against it. So thank you, Dad, for that. Even to this day, I'm kind of shocked that he even did that. But yeah, so I started there and then have had a few businesses along the way. My most recent one is Amplomedia, which is a digital marketing agency in which we help businesses generate customers. Previous to that, I had a consulting business, and previous to that, I had a few other things that I was working on, but nothing super substantial until now, I guess.
Fantastic. What an interesting background. And gotta love dads, right? They supported you in your early on in your entrepreneurial journey. So it's fantastic. So you're a podcaster, you're run a marketing agency. I also see you out there in the community quite a bit. I call you sometimes Mr. Community to people just because you're out there emceeing and doing a lot of events. So as we were getting ready to start the podcast earlier, we were kind of saying, well, geez, Lance, with your background and understanding and entrepreneurship, we could have talked about a million different things today. But something kind of came up in a recent meeting. And of course, you all are aware of AI. And what is AI? And is this a hot topic? And some people kind of shy away saying, oh, it's not for me. Some people are on the other side of it. You've got to welcome it and, welcoming arms and give a ton more TLC. And this is the future. There's not two sides of it. There's lots of different kind of gray areas. So we thought we'd bring out AI as a hot topic for today's podcast and just share a few thoughts. We may not lean one way or the other, but we wanted to start the idea of sharing some thoughts around this topic.
Yeah, this is definitely, in my opinion, should be the hottest topic that every business owner should be spending some time really trying to understand and really trying to figure out how they're going to deal with this in their business or in the general business world, because it's going to have an impact on every business, whether you think so or not, right? So I've talked to a lot of people that aren't in the tech space, right, are not using a lot of tech. So people who are maybe in the trades and they say, AI, that doesn't impact my business. And quite frankly, that's a bunch of BS because it's going to impact the overall economy. And, that can be debated, good or bad, but it's going to impact you because you are a business in the economy, because you are doing business with other people and other businesses. And so, yeah, there's a lot of things to unpack here. So I'd love to have a conversation with you all about that.
It's interesting that you bring up AI because it's recently been in the news quite a bit. I've heard about, in fact, my daughter works for the Film and Actors Union, and they actually went on strike. And one of the key components of their contract negotiation was the use of AI in replace of writers. So they've resolved that, and they actually got guarantees that the writers would be guaranteed that AI, humans, not AI, would write scripts. So it is a hot topic, and we hear about AI all the time, and we hear about its impacts, and I don't think any of us really grasp exactly how it will affect us. So, I'm sort of the average Joe, and I want to know, how is that going to impact me? What don't I know that I should know, Lance? And I know that you're not an AI expert. This is your sort of opinion, and you've been involved with enough entrepreneurs that you see it coming down our lane. So what are we going to see?
Yeah, exactly. It is definitely coming down our lane. It's already here for so many businesses already. My business in particular, we are trying to figure out ways to incorporate it wherever we possibly can, because I'm very much in the camp of there's going to be two different types of businesses in the future. There's going to be the businesses that fully embrace AI and try to incorporate it wherever they possibly can. And there's going to be the businesses who are no longer in business. It's really, it's really going to be split between those two. And
that's a line in the sand.
Yeah, that was very bold.
That's
bold.
A gully. That's not a line.
Jeez.
And that's scary, right? Because you don't want to be on the wrong side of that line. And so, yeah, the tools that we have now, that we've been playing around with really for the last almost a year now, I suppose, is really when ChatGPT came out late last fall. People started to get access to it. And so that, allowed a lot of people to experiment and play around with it. And now we're seeing it's being incorporated and integrated into just about every tool out there now from a tech stack standpoint. And so when I sit back and I think about AI, I think about it in terms of the impact on businesses. And like I mentioned, it could go one of two ways. There's a lot of people that think that AI is going to fuel this incredible growth in both in terms of gross domestic product growth as well as employment growth and so on, because there's going to be so much greater productivity that can be achieved through AI. And then also, there's a lot of people thinking that there's going to be much greater consumption that's going to occur because AI and the influence of automation and robotics and everything else are going to allow manufacturers of goods and products the ability to customize, personalize them a lot more and make them a lot more useful for people. And so people are going to then end up consuming more. But on the flip side of that is it's also going to reduce the cost of a lot of services, which then will depress, I suppose, a little bit of that gross domestic product gain that people are, hoping might be there. But I think where I'm the most concerned about AI is going to be on what I fear could be a global collapse of our economic situation. And where I think that could play in is every other, major innovation disruption that we've had has usually replaced kind of the bottom rung of the economic ladder, right? So people typically in lower paying jobs were losing their jobs to other technological revolutions. And so with AI, though, it's going to actually impact those businesses or those positions, within businesses who are much more up the rungs. They're the knowledge workers. They're the people who typically were holding, middle to upper middle income classes. And so think about, lawyers, accountants, engineers, data scientists, and programmers and so on. These are all really high paying jobs.
Don't you think in this transition that we're going to see more contracts like we've just seen with the writers? Do you think people are going to be protective of that position by basically holding the employer hostage?
Yeah, I don't think that you can quash innovation, right? And I think that what they were asking for was really asinine, to be frank. Like, I think that it's a futile fight that they're trying to fight. So they might have it in a contract where there's some sort of limitations there to it, but you can't stop it. Innovation is going to happen. And so what they needed to do is figure out, okay, well, how do we embrace it? Because it's the people who are embracing AI, they're the ones who are going to be replacing the jobs from the people who aren't embracing AI.
So at the university level right now, they're having issues with it. They're having issues with the students using AI to do their homework, to write their programming for computer programs. I was just sitting with a professor from SFU the other day, and he told me he had the same wrong answer by several students. And when he put his question into ChatGPT, it was the same wrong answer that was produced. So I imagine this learning to embrace it has to start there. It has to start in our universities. It has to teach our new students how they can embrace it, use it. I mean, it's like the internet. Really, it's no different. It's a tool we have access to that previous generations never had access to.
Exactly. Like the calculator, right?
And the calculator before the internet. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's the way we have to think about these things is, there was a lot of resistance when I was in school with, using the calculator for tests. So you could use the calculator for practices and stuff, but then you couldn't use it sometimes in different kinds of tests that you were doing, right? Now, students don't have any problem, or the institutions don't have any problems with people using the smart calculators and then some, right? And so again, it's one of those things when you think about it logically, well, why were we limiting or wanting to limit the use of that technology? Going back to the calculator, well, there was a fear that people weren't going to learn what they needed to learn. But it's the same thing with AI.
Aren't we actually promoting, less higher thinking by bringing in some of this AI functionality? I mean, if you talk to some of the kids nowadays, first of all, they won't even know what a calculator is. I mean, they've got their smartphones. Are the smartphones really helping us become smart, or do we have, a chance for us to say maybe they're dumbing us down?
I think it's just a shift in skill set. It's just a shift in skill set.
The biggest thing right now is teaching them how to leverage the tool, not use the tool to replace their brain, right?
Yes.
And shift what we want them to do in terms of the thinking part of it, right? So do we need to use our brain power to think about a calculation, or do we want to use our brain power to think about the application of the answer? And that's the same, that's back to the calculator example again. And it's the same thing with AI. And so we can't stop it. You're never going to put this genie back in the bottle, right? And so all we can do is embrace it. And the challenge for businesses is at what pace can you actually embrace and innovate, embrace that technology and innovate with it? That, I think, is going to be the biggest hurdle for so many businesses out there who are going to find themselves on that wrong side, because it's the speed of innovation that is crippling so many businesses. And so we have to sort that out. We have to figure out, how do we embrace it? How do we incorporate it? And how do we really leverage it for our growth and outcompete? Because I'll tell you today, there's what I have as far as a competitive advantage right now within my marketplace will not be the same, will not be there I'm talking like 6 to 12 months. I'm not talking 5 to 6 years.
They're talking about the exponential growth that this creates as well, right? And the way it learns so quickly. Crazy.
We've seen the effects in our business. So in accounting, public practice, this is the biggest revolution to accounting since the switch from like ledger books to accounting software. This is like the biggest change. And I can see it. The practice that I am running today is not the practice that I was running in February. It's changed that much in that short of time. It's not just AI, but getting ready to embrace AI. Like 6 months ago, we were not in a position that we would even be able to leverage any sort of AI. Now we've gone through a whole bunch of changes, and we are now in a position where we are ready to be able to leverage the opportunities that are available to us. We are using it to augment communication. Like instead of spending an hour to write an email, I tell the chat GPT what I want it to write in what tone I want it to write it. And it gives me something that I still need to edit and fact check and all that kind of stuff. But it would take me hours to think of all the right words to write the email. And I'm a much better editor than I am a writer.
And those tools are going to get incorporated into all of the software, right?
Copilot, 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. And so like when I think about the accounting practice as an example, there's also another element that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. And this is going to be the development of the future senior accountants. Okay. So right now you have a bunch of accountants who have been in practice for, a varying degree of years. And so typically how it is, you hire a junior accountant, right? And then that junior accountant learns how to do the basics and then learns some of the more advanced practices. And then they can also, when they're reviewing some of the work of other juniors, they have the more senior people they have the ability to quickly identify where maybe errors are, or opportunities for the business owner and the strategies and so on, right? So what is going to happen, my fear is that we're going to wipe out most of those junior accountants with AI. They're going to be replaced. And so what you're going to have is the senior accountants today who are going to be reviewing the work of the AI to make sure it's accurate and to uncover all those nuggets of useful information that you can pass along as advice to their clients. But how do we develop the skill set so that we have senior accountants in the future who are going to be able to continue the work of analyzing the AI as well? So that part of it is a bit of a challenge. Some people will say, well, AI will just be that smart where you're not going to have to worry about it. But I don't know if that's the case. Right now, we definitely see a lot of errors within AI, and I'm sure it's going to get better. But we still need to have that senior level of thinking when it comes to that. And I'm a little worried about where that happens, because now our pool of juniors is going to kind of get eradicated to some degree in the not too distant future, in my opinion.
I'm 100% with you on your understanding of that and how you broke it down in terms of whether it's a junior accountant or a junior person working in our firm in finance and analysis or research division. All of those pieces, what we're missing with the AI or the use of AI being able to help us be more efficient is that we're missing the human piece of it, our development. development of our juniors to become the seniors. Not just that development, but the development of our people to then interact with other people. We jokingly had a conversation the other night. I was with a board and we're like, can we have a course on how adults talk to adults? Because I think we're missing out here. And that development piece, as you go through that process from junior to mid to senior, and if we take the use of AI and we either drop those people out. I mean, how do you make a senior? We used to pay our dues before we were able to get up to this level.
Going to have to be some kind of evolution in the juniors. Like you're going to still have to have some sort of method of evolving them with time and experience to get to be a senior. If we need seniors, if AI doesn't wipe out the senior entirely, then we need to evolve those juniors into seniors. Somehow we have to work together with AI to do that.
Right. So a lot of
capacity is going to change is what it's going to happen. Is the grunt work that a junior now does, their capacity is going to be just huge because they're going to be able to use AI to do the grunt work. And they maybe will start the initial review and then the senior do the final review. That's where my thought process goes.
Well, you also have to, in the accounting industry specifically, we already have a shortage of accountants. So being able to leverage those accountants to do things with AI is actually kind of useful, right?
Yeah, so useful today. I'm just wondering, because I've heard this argument as well from other people where they're like, we can't find the people right now. Like there's definitely a crisis that a lot of industries have been talking about this for a while, right? As the baby boomer starts to age out of the workforce, the gap that's going to be there, how are we going to fill that? And so what I would say is that, AI is going to, help us deal with all that. But I think then it's going to actually be replacing those jobs. And so in the short term, I see just tremendous benefits with AI, like tremendous. I'm so excited about AI. In the not too distant longer term, and so by not too distant, I mean within 5 years or so, that's where I'm going to be really concerned about what's going to be happening there. If we don't have that economic explosion that a lot of people are saying is maybe going to be there because of the effects of AI and the increase in productivity and consumption and everything else.
I normally would have gone ahead and said, yes, I agree with that argument or what you've just posited, but money isn't cheap anymore. So the whole idea of using innovation meant that we actually had to spend money. Because if we were trying to be efficient in manufacturing, what are we trying to do? We're replacing kind of that first level and adding in robots. A friend of ours just came back from Japan and the restaurant was completely serviced by a robot. But that costs money. Money isn't cheap. So now we're also bringing the economy into this. So, and I have great concerns when it comes to, the use of AI. My first question is, what happens if the power goes out, guys? All your efficiencies mean nothing at this point. And that's where, somebody else, like me, and maybe I am the dinosaur, maybe I am not embracing, maybe I should be considering further, but we're keeping people. We may be able to level up our people a little bit differently. We may be able to do things a bit more efficiently because the younger people, which I call sometimes now the AI generation, that's a term I don't know if you guys have started hearing. They school us and say, have you thought of, have you considered, what about? And so they're supporting the growth and innovation side of things, which we actually want them to do. But at the same time, nothing can replace people.
I would challenge you, though, a little bit on that, Rita, because for my business, as an example, so one of the first things that we really started incorporating AI into is our writing team. And so I agree. I don't want to let go of any of my team, and we're growing. And so we're able to fuel that growth by supporting our team's productivity with AI. But what that has done is that has eliminated the new hire that we would have had. So will I ever hire another new writer is the question. Or will the tools just continue to become more and more efficient and effective, and our productivity is just so much better? So we're going to be able to maintain our growth trajectory with the same complement of staff that we have currently. So right now, I'm not getting rid of people, but I'm not hiring more people in certain departments because of AI.
I think that's what I see as the initial benefit of AI is the increased capacity of the existing staff. I think if you leverage AI right now, you may be able, in Candace's case, in your case, and even in my business, to be able to write technical reports using ChatGPT. It's definitely a possibility. So it does increase the ability of one person to produce more, right? They obviously will.
Yeah, so that's the first step, I think. And in the second step, once your growth levels off as a company, if it does, or it starts to go the other way, it's an economics decision, right? As much as I love my people and I hate having to lay off anybody, like I'll do everything I possibly can to not lay somebody off. But, there's going to be a point in time potentially where I need to make that economic decision. And when you go back to the cost, and this, I loved what you were commenting there, Rita, in terms of the cost of innovation in the past it used to be quite costly to implement. And so it still is with robotics and everything else in factories and whatnot on production. But in the knowledge economy, it's actually incredibly inexpensive right now to incorporate AI and innovate that way. Like it's actually like immediately cost savings. The costs of the AI tools are less than the cost of the time that was consumed before incorporating it, right? So it's really an economic no-brainer in a lot of respect.
I 100% totally hear where you're coming from on that side. And when it comes to certain staff and certain things as we go forward with our staff, sometimes the objectivity potentially of AI makes life a little easier. Sometimes there's not as many, I don't know, what do we call it, mood swings, up and down days, situations. But at the end of the day, again, it depends on the industry. I think it just boils down to that. It depends on the industry and where you're sitting at. I know that there will be a lot of effect and change that'll be happening across industries. But when it comes down to people and people management, and ours is a company, and I know all of you work in a firm where people and relationships are key. But for us, we actually spend, 20 years building relationships external to our firm that allows us to connect and build resources for other companies as they continue to grow and build their firm. So that, for me, I think you can't change that 20 years of relationship through AI. It just won't fit. It just won't
I agree with that. I agree with that, Rita. But I also agree with what Lance says, is that your people and the relationships you have are going to be enhanced, and you're going to be more profitable, and you're going to do things quicker and maybe in greater volume for your people if you leverage the AI that's available to us.
Which I'm not disagreeing with. I'm saying that. So, but going back to Lance's comment about what will happen to a company, I think because we'll be able to leverage, because we'll be able to be a little bit more productive, it leaves the people at the top to have a little bit more capacity to consider other ideas for the company, different revenue streams, different ways to move the business forward, and or adding on new things. So I think we'll still be able to continue moving the business forward, but maybe at a different pace and a different level. So I'm thinking in terms of being optimistic and adding additional companies, additional revenue streams, and working in that respect.
So if the pie, though, remains somewhat similar in size, and all of your competitors, Rita, are doing the same thing as you, so you're collectively increasing capacity, but demand is not increasing any further, what happens then? Because there's always going to be those companies. So I'm going to presume that you do an incredible job with your client base, and you have a great network who are going to continue to refer business to you and continue to use your services. And so if you increase your capacity, you're going to be then potentially grabbing more market share. So that's displacing other people who are not as agile as what you are. And so I think the company that embraces it to its highest extent, while also it's not in isolation, right? While also being able to maintain really incredible relationships and do the business development stuff properly and execute on the work, right? And get that reputation. They're the ones that are going to displace the ones who are not embracing it quite as much, don't have quite as much efficiency. So their cost structure is going to be a little bit higher, those kinds of things, right?
You just can't compete when that cost structure is higher. How can you, right? Because, the other, firm A would be able to price down. because I can do it that much faster. A quick example, some people say, do you guys do business plans? Or, what about the companies that write? I mean, that can be done within a matter of 30 minutes to an hour now. Do we like the business plans? Is there a lot more to it? Yeah, but the point is, like Candice was saying earlier, I might not be like being the composer of the entire email or in the entire thing, but I'm a really good editor. And you've just saved that much time. So there's definitely things that will happen, and people were going to have to pivot. People are going to have to consider new thoughts or new ideas. And or what another thing that's coming through, I find, is a lot of people are starting to talk to one another and merging and saying, why don't we consider working together? We've done it for a while, but now this is going to actually make a lot more sense. So I fear we could go on and on and on, but I know we're getting close to time. I'm hoping that there's been a little bit of food for thought, whether you agree with what we're saying, what we're not saying. Like the whole point was to open up the conversation. I'd like to go around the room like we do usually at the end of every session, which is basically kind of a quick fire where we get a chance to add another comment, or maybe somebody ask another question, or just throw in the last kind of, hey, have you thought of this idea? I'm going to start with Peggy and then work ourselves all the way back to Lance.
Well, thanks for bringing this up, Lance. It really is an interesting subject, and it has hit the news, and it is going to be a part of our lives. And the one thing that I keep thinking about is if we are going to embrace it, we need to figure out at the university level how we start there, how we train the next gen coming in to use it effectively. And hopefully that will then enter our businesses as young employees and get us all adopting it, because it is a fact of life. And then I also wonder, what will it look like in 5 years from now? And I'm hoping it's not going to be the economic recession that you're talking about, but it is moving so quickly, and it's already changed our world in a year. So who knows?
Yeah, I was going to say, our firm is embracing AI. We're trying to use it responsibly where we can. Obviously, we have privacy things, and, we've had the big chat with the whole team and everything about the proper use and everything. But what I think you've brought to my forefront is probably along the lines of what Peggy's talking about, is training the people that we have to think differently and to use the tools to do their job more effectively, and to become more of the oversight and the knowledge bearer to use those tools effectively. So I think we're going to have to focus on our training a little bit in a different way. So.
Fantastic. And Lance, let's hear your last thoughts here.
Yeah, so I know the collapse of the economy is definitely the most pessimistic look at it. And I'm definitely concerned with that, but I'm also equally excited by it and what its differences it's making in our business and what the future might hold there. But I'm also really concerned with so many businesses out there who are ignoring it and are not applying, like the owners aren't spending some of their brain power, some of their time really thinking about how it can be incorporated into their business. Because my fear is that there's going to be a lot of them that are going to end up in that category of not in business anymore because they've waited too long. And this is something that is the fastest innovation out of any innovation I think that we've ever experienced that's hitting businesses. And it's not one of those things that we can sleep on. We have to start making, decisions and action it really quickly. And if we don't, I think we're in for a world of hurt. And so that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just regardless of where you think the future is going to be, because we can't predict that, you definitely need to be paying attention to this, and you need to figure out ways to implement it now. Don't wait.
Well, I'm gonna throw it back to you really quick, Lance. If we had to do another session, which sounds like we're going to now just because of this, how would someone begin the process? I'm a business owner. I'm so busy in my every single day. I'm not working on the business, which is what you're suggesting, which is what we're talking about here, and looking at it. So to some people, it's just too much. And where do you start? So maybe that's a topic for our next session. Instead of me just throwing it at you, you don't have to answer. But that's definitely a kind of next level question as well for some people.
I can answer it by saying what I do currently. And so, like most founders and CEOs of companies, you're wearing lots of hats, you're doing a lot of things, and it's really difficult to keep up with everything. And so we have different departments within our company, and I have challenged all of my department heads to be looking at all the tools and latest tools. So they carve out a bit of time every month where they go and they do a review, and then they surface the ones that have the most promise to me. And then we talk about that at our executive table, essentially, into which ones make the most sense for us to continue to explore and to incorporate. And so that's how I'm dealing with it. And then I also do, a lot of reading. I listen to a lot of different podcasts and experts and so on the topic. But the problem with it is anything that somebody publishes today is already, expired. It's already old news. And so the tools are just coming out so fast and furious that one of the biggest challenges that we have right now is not so much identifying tools that would be very useful and make sense to incorporate into our business from a cost standpoint and benefit standpoint. It's more about trying to evaluate whether or not that's going to be the right tech stack tool to fit into our tech stack, because there's so many of the incredible tools out there. I don't know if they're going to be in business tomorrow, because everybody's on this race. And so there's going to be some winners, but there's going to be a ton of losers out there. And I don't want, with my business, to be investing in and training people on how to use tool A when tool A could be obsolete in a few months, because now it's been incorporated into a big tool that we're already using. And so that's our biggest challenge. And I think this is going to be the thing that's going to hold people back from embracing, is it's like, okay, I don't know where to start. Okay, this looks okay, but then if I implement this, and then I get burnt on it because now it's no longer available because the company's out of business, or now it's old technology. You get into that analysis paralysis a little bit, and also risk analysis too, right? So that's the biggest hurdle, I think, going forward for people.
So I heard you say embrace it and then, implement it. And then it might not work because it could be gone tomorrow. So I'm getting a bit confused here as an entrepreneur.
So am I.
That sounds like another episode for us, I think.
Yeah. So I'll leave it on that note. And my final thoughts, I'm just going to echo, thank you, Lance, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And I think this is definitely a lively topic, and we might have to just bring you back in for kind of round 2 of this. One thing we didn't make mention of when it comes to the use of AI is, well, a couple of things, and some people might be thinking of this, and that's why I'll bring it up, is bias and where does the information go? And there's a lot of stuff around that. So perhaps we shall call you back, Lance, and walk through bias. Where does the information go? The idea of what do I embrace? Because what if it's gone tomorrow? And how much due diligence and time do we have? But I love how you work within your team, within the departments, and have them come through with what makes sense for them and their departments, because it sounds like a lot more networking perhaps might need to go on within our businesses and our industry. So very excited. I just want to say thank you again to Lance, to Peggy, to Candace, myself, Rita. We sure hope that you enjoyed this episode of Serenity Now, and perhaps we gave you, maybe you found a little bit of Serenity Now. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and picked up some good tips and best practices that would benefit your entrepreneurial journey. Remember, none of the content in this podcast should be relied upon as standard legal or business advice. Always consult a professional for your specific business. You may know someone who could benefit from this podcast. Please share it with your business community, and perhaps it can give an entrepreneur some serenity now.